Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, Jill Tolles joins us. She's the Executive Director of the Guinn Center for Policy Priorities, here for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
When in Carson City, Nevada Newsmakers records in the conference room of the Nevada Builders Alliance. Coverage of the 2025 legislative session is brought to you by Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you. NV Energy, proudly serving Nevada, providing electricity to 2.4 million electric customers. The Retail Association of Nevada, looking out for business. And by Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
We don't have a choice where we go to school, even if it's unsafe or we're being bullied. It's not fair. Every family should be able to choose the school that is best for us, not just the families who have a lot of money. Governor Lombardo wants to give every kid and every family the ability to go to a school where we can learn and where we're safe. He's fighting for us. Thank you, Governor Lombardo.
Meet Nevada Health Link, Nevada's official health insurance marketplace. Your link to savings, selection, free assistance, and name brand health insurance, where 90% of enrollees lower the cost of their monthly premium. Everyone deserves access to quality health coverage, no matter your income or family size. Visit NevadaHealthLink.com. A few minutes could save you hundreds of dollars per month.
Nevada Health Link. Our plans are made for your plans.
Your good times are at Tamarack Casino during the $150,000 Denim and Diamonds giveaways, with cash and free play drawings every Thursday and Saturday, and $30,000 in grand finale giveaways Saturday, May 31st, including a top prize of $20,000 guaranteed. Your good times are at Tamarack Casino.
Save money and take transit. Did you know you can ride the bus all day for less than what it would cost you for a gallon of gas? Plan your trip now by going to rtcwashoe.com.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from Carson City at the home of the Nevada Builders Alliance. We are delighted to welcome back to the program Jill Tolles. She is the Executive Director of the Guinn Center for Policy Priorities. Pleasure to have you back.
Thank you. It's always good to see you, and you're looking surprisingly well rested for this time in the session.
Well, thank you. I try to get my whole 5 hours every night.
Right.
You took over the Guinn Center back in, 2023?
Yes.
What were your expectations then of what you might be able to accomplish?
Well, first of all, I'm still incredibly passionate about this mission because I had just come out of the legislature and I knew how important it was to have trustworthy information to help you base decisions. And we are in the crux right now of the legislative session where every senator and assembly person is getting bombarded with special interests and different fact sheets, different data, and just how do you know what to trust. And so my hope was to continue to build off of the legacy of the directors before me. And the Guinn Center had been around for 8 years, had a stellar reputation, but had slowed down through COVID and needed a rebuild. And so first and foremost, we needed to rebuild the structures and the team, and then produce good quality information ahead of this legislative session. And so I'm happy to say that over the 2-year interim, we were able to produce over 24 reports and briefs on education, health and social, economic and fiscal policy, governance and elections, and not so much in the natural resources, but we hope to rebuild that part of our house in the future.
And a much bigger staff.
And a much bigger staff. So I started with 3 employees. We had 1 full-fledged researcher, an admin assistant, and then an intern who stayed on after graduation. And we now have 12 members of our team, full-time and part-time, and then 3 times as many partnerships with academic faculty, graduate students, and subject matter experts across the state.
I would think that everybody involved has been incredibly grateful to have this kind of information, especially by the fact that it's nonpartisan.
Absolutely. I'm really proud of the fact that we have both Democrats and Republicans who have talked about our research, quoted it in hearings, asked us to help present in committees, and talked about how they look to it as a resource. We've got the governor's policy team that has incorporated our recommendations. We have legislators that have incorporated our recommendations into their bills, and that are texting us or emailing us in the middle of the day saying, could you resend me that graph? I'd love to see that breakdown of those numbers. And we're even getting some wonderful feedback at the federal level that oftentimes Congressional Research Services does a phenomenal job, but they don't always drill down into Nevada specific facts. And we dive deep into that information.
I would imagine, from your experience as a legislator, that how difficult it was on your committees to be able to get the information you needed, because it's a part-time legislator. These folks are not dealing with this 5 days a week, 2 weeks a year.
Right.
It's incredibly difficult, and especially if they're not involved in these issues in their normal course of life.
Absolutely. I mean, that on average, you're looking at over 1,000 bills in 120 days, between 1,100 and 1,500. You have to vote on approximately 700 to 900. And I'll never forget a day in the legislature for me. I started with a very emotional 2-hour hearing on the death penalty, followed by a very technical hearing on how to regulate marijuana, followed by a very, very, I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings, but dry insurance policy hearing in the afternoon, and then followed by fish pedicures, whether or not we should make them regulate fish pedicures. Should fish eat the dead skin off your feet? And so you can have everything from tax policy, education policy, criminal justice, revenues, economic development, and government affairs. There's so much that you're tackling, and you really do need consumable, bite-sized facts, but know that the deep dive analysis, quantitative and qualitative analysis, is behind that. I do want to say that LCB does an amazing job of supporting legislators, and they are extremely valuable in the state, but they don't always have the capacity to do the 18 to 24 month deep dive that our research team can do on particular topics.
Okay, so let's talk about some particular topics.
Yeah.
The results of your investigation into early childhood education.
Yes. So fascinating to understand the complex web that we have in the state. We have over 60 programs dedicated to early childhood. We have over 25 different statutes and 36 budget categories. And so there's two things to consider when you look at those stats. Number one is if you're a parent trying to navigate this complex system on behalf of a student or a child that has special needs, or you have multiple needs that you're trying to meet, it's very difficult to navigate that system. And it's also very siloed, and not necessarily everyone is talking to each other. And then from a government efficiency standpoint, it's perhaps not the best way to go about having so many different programs dedicated. And so one of the things that our team looked at is what are some models in other states of how you can bring in someone to help coordinate, oversee, and make some shifts to make sure that it's less complex for the user, i.e. the families, and it's more efficient from a government standpoint. So that is something that had made its way into policy proposals. It has not made its way through the process thus far, but we still have a week and a half left. But then there's some other ways of looking at how do we meet needs, everything from looking at funding availability for things like expanding universal pre-K and so forth.
What other states did you find that had solutions to this? Because that's frequently the problem is one looks outside of Nevada and then finds that nobody else is doing it right either.
Right. I would draw people to the report to actually dive into the state-by-state analysis, and you can find that on guinncenter.org. But definitely looking at some models of ways to bring in either one specific office of early childhood that is housed in either the governor's office or housed with the Department of Education or within Health and Human Services. Another model is to bring in, if you will, an ombudsman or somebody who's can set up a temporary office that can oversee it, look for consolidation, and then it would sunset after a period of time.
Were you getting pushback in some of these areas like early childhood education? Because I know that, for example, Chris Sanchez with the Department of Business and Industry is working on the governor's behalf with boards and commissions to get, and there has been tremendous pushback from all kinds of boards and for all kinds of reasons.
Right.
Are you seeing the same kind of thing with early childhood education?
You bring up a great point, and that is, what is the Guinn Center's role in the process? And we don't lobby for specific legislation. We do the deep dive analysis. We present the evidence-based recommendations where we can find them. And then it really is up to whether or not the legislature wants to pick up those recommendations and run with it, and whether or not the governor's policy team is interested in running with it. I will say conversations over the interim were open, but had questions about who does that fall under and whether or not there is a willingness to let go of that jurisdiction. Some people like to have control within their departments, and I do think that that is part of the challenge when you do come in and say, how do we work better together so that there's not that territorialism, which is why I think having buy-in by, ideally, if it is going to move forward, the governor's policy team, the governor and the legislature, and I think setting up that temporary office to help bring those entities together to find that solution would be a multi-step process that would benefit the state and the families that they serve.
It definitely would. It's a long road, though.
Yep.
All right, let's take a break. We'll come right back with Jill Tolles after this timeout.
The trucking industry is the most resilient link in the supply chain. And for over 90 years, the Nevada Trucking Association has been the voice for the men and women in the trucking industry. From Carson City to Washington, D.C., we advocate for policies to protect our trucking companies and keep commerce flowing. Because Nevada's and America's prosperity is tied to trucks. There's nothing without trucking.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years. Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
Pro Group Management offers workers' comp services to a growing number of industries. As businesses grow and change with the times, the need for a solid workers' comp program must be flexible and up to date. The evolving nature of regulations can make staying ahead of complex tasks challenging. But Pro Group Management simplifies the work so your industry can move forward and succeed. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Like a traditional handmade basket, retail is woven into the fabric of life in Nevada. From big box to mom and pop, retail supports our communities in countless ways. Jobs for the disabled, team uniforms for kids, help for the elderly, and so much more. Retail employs over 1 in 10 workers. Retail supports Nevada, and we support retail.
RANNV.org.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Jill Tolles. She's the Executive Director of the Guinn Center for Policy Priorities. I don't think that the general public understands, you were saying, sharing a little bit of information about this earlier, of how many bills there are, or at least bill requests.
Right.
You've got interns tracking the legislation. How much legislation do they have to track? It's got to be vast.
It is. So we do have 2 UNR interns working for us this session, and they've done a phenomenal job, number one, learning about the process, and everyone should dive in and learn about the process as citizens if they can. But we're tracking 110 bills that tie to our research, and now, of course, many of those don't make it through the first house, so now it's whittled down to 55. And what we're looking for is what bills tie to the topics that we studied over the interim, so that it helps us gauge, are we staying relevant? Are we connecting with some of the top issues that legislators are looking at, some of the top questions they're asking, some of the top needs that they're trying to address in this session? And then we're also looking at, out of those, are there recommendations that were included in our reports that are making their way through the process and being considered? And at the end of the session, we're going to go back and evaluate, did we make a connection with those top issues? And also, were the recommendations considered and implemented? And then the other thing we're going to look at is, how often are we referenced in hearings? And I know for certain, because we've been a part of some of those hearings,
Sure.
we have presented in front of committees. We did a lot of presentations over the interim to the interim committees, and we were even invited to help provide technical support during bill hearings that utilized recommendations from one of our reports. And we don't, again, lobby for or against a bill. You'll never see us show up in support or opposition. But if we're invited by a lawmaker to help explain our methodology, the data, the findings behind a recommendation, we provide that technical support. And what we're looking for is, are we being utilized by both Republicans and Democrats? And are we being utilized by the executive branch to just make sure that we are hitting the mark of providing meaningful information that's being useful in the legislative process? And then the other thing that we look at is, how much are we getting that out to the public? And that is something that we're continuing to expand on, because a well-informed citizenry can engage in the process in a more effective way if they have good factual information. And there are special interest groups or advocacy groups that might find our information really useful if they're advocating for improvement in education, or if they're advocating for housing affordability, or if they're advocating for greater job economic growth. Those are the kinds of things they can look to our reports.
Have you found that it's difficult to get the word out to the general public these days with the cutbacks in the news industry, especially in the print news industry?
Yeah.
They don't have the reporters to cover as many things as they had before.
I think you're speaking to a very real challenge, that there's so few of them, and there's so much information, and it's so difficult to do the deep diving, which is another reason why I feel like it's so important to have entities like the Guinn Center, where we can do the deep dive and get that information to our partners where we can. I've been really grateful that we've had great media partners. We're always really grateful for the Nevada Newsmakers. We're grateful for others like Nevada Independent, PBS, in both North and South, have done deep dives. And we're very encouraged to see that there is still a broad audience that tunes into your show, that tunes into the deeper dive Face the State that I was on 2 weeks ago. And I'm sorry I'm mentioning all your partners, but
that's fine.
We live in a world where
we need more media. We don't need less media.
We need our media partners, and it's so important. It's the reason why they made it into the Constitution and our First Amendment. It is crucial to democracy that we have good factual information out there and a public who's engaged. And yes, I do find that the public is hungry for nonpartisan information they can trust and that's well vetted and in depth.
I think Joe Rogan has proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that not only is an audience willing to listen to something in depth, but a young audience is willing to listen to things in depth.
Yeah.
And so I think that bodes well for our future. It's just that not necessarily do corporations that run newspapers or broadcasting entities realize, some do, but a lot don't, that you don't have to do it all in 30 seconds.
Right. Yep. And I think you're right. The hunger is out there. So, and it's something that we're, as I said, in the last 2.5 years, it has been a rebuild. And the first year was really rebuilding the structure. Second year was producing the work, which we did in spades. We actually produced 8 reports and briefs in 2023, 16 in 2024, and we're on track to double that again to probably closer to 32 by the end of this year. And not just deep dive 100-page reports, but also more accessible briefs and fact sheets that are 5 to 10 pages. So they're just grabbable information. And then that third phase is promoting. And then beyond that is just continuing to refine and expand our model so that we really do see this as an institution that we want to see around for 40 years.
Right.
It's a legacy. We want to live up to the legacy of Governor Kenny Guinn's name, but also be something that is trustworthy, that can be available to all and accessible.
One of the things that you were studying was education funding,
Mm-hmm.
and I've talked about it on this program, and I know you're aware of just how much money was put in. Well over $2 billion in
Right.
the last session. Were you able to track any success from that amount of money going in, or does it just take too long for that money to filter through the system to be able to see results from that?
It takes time to turn the Titanic around, and so it's a positive trajectory, but everyone asks about, if we're going to put that money in, where's the accountability for results? And that's certainly a topic of discussion in the legislature this session, as it should be. And so we absolutely took a look at how did the dollars get to the students. We found some areas for improvement, and it was a massive change. So, for example, Chair Selena Torres-Fawcett brought forward a bill looking at two of our top recommendations in terms of data collection and sharing. What we found is that, again, there's some silos and there's differences of the way that data is tracked, of how did those dollars get to the students with English language learning needs, how did they get to the students with special ed needs, with gifted and talented, versus the base level, and at risk, and how are we tracking what really makes a student at risk. And what we found is that there's some real gaps in that data sharing and transparency. And so one of the pieces of legislation based on our recommendations that is making its way through the process so far successfully, I don't want to jinx it, but is how do we have better transparency, data sharing, and tracking of that information, of how each of those students are receiving those dollars. And that is crucial to be able to then tie it to, is it working in those targeted areas, so we can determine, as lawmakers can determine, and we as citizens can see, are we getting the return on investment? And if not, is there better ways to target those dollars to get those improvements and outcomes?
And this is from a totally uneducated point of view, but perhaps a potentially logical point of view. It seems to me that education funding is really split into two main categories. One is where, and I know you can't get into taking sides on any of this, but one side of it is that unions have the absolute right and necessity of doing the best for their members. But the other side of it is educating kids so that their math skills and their English skills, for example, are brought up to a level that makes total sense. Yeah. Does it subdivide like that, to where it's taking care of the employees versus taking care of the kids, right, and those are two silos, or is it a much bigger context than that?
It's not something that the report dug into per se, but I think that with better data, you can determine some of the questions, like how much of that per pupil funding gets absorbed into everything like negotiations over teacher tenure and pay, and how does it impact a school that has teachers that are higher paid because they've have longer tenure in the process, versus are we using that to pay for specialists to help with literacy, to help see those specific outcomes for students. And that's something that we'd like to do some more follow-up work on, and I think that will help answer those key questions that you bring up.
All right, let's take another break, and we'll be back with Jill Tolles after this timeout.
Welcome to Story County, where history meets innovation, and a pioneering spirit continues to shape our future. At the heart of the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, we power the future with global leaders in technology and manufacturing, driving progress that reaches far beyond our county lines. From advanced manufacturing to tech innovation, our industries are creating thousands of quality careers, fueling a vibrant economy that benefits every Nevadan. But it's more than just growth. Our community is our foundation, supporting families, empowering local initiatives, and creating a place where everyone belongs. Be part of a legacy built on bold ideas and boundless possibilities. Join us in building a brighter future right here in Story County. Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
All hail the $200,000 Cash is King giveaways at Carson Valley Inn. Weekly prize drawings including thousands in cash and free play. And 2 big grand prize giveaway events, each with a $15,000 cash winner guaranteed. Only at the Carson Valley Inn.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Jill Toll. She's the Executive Director of the Guinn Center for Policy Priorities. Housing and federal funds briefing were two of the big things that you were dealing with.
Yes, there's so much to cover. We're just going to have more time. But the team
on the next show.
On the next show. But the team has done an amazing job. We really have brought together some talented researchers on our team and policy directors in health, education, and economic and fiscal policy. And 2 reports that have gotten a lot of attention over the last 6 weeks or so has been our housing affordability study and our federal funding brief. And I would encourage everyone to take a look at it. The housing study was requested by the governor's office. It was approved by the legislature and takes a look at how do we get here and what can we do to get out of it. And then federal funding really takes a look at what are our top programs in the state that are federally funded. 27.7% of Nevada's budget is federally funded. And so we broke down those top 5 categories and actually line itemed each program and how much they're receiving so that people could see for themselves.
So we will get more into this. Give us about a month or so to get over the legislature, and then we'll come back and talk about this, okay?
Absolutely.
And
thank
you
you
for being here always.
Right.
We appreciate it, and we'll be right back.
A power line is more than a power line. It's maintaining the bottom line for small businesses. It's keeping the assembly line moving for our workforce. For our brightest minds, it's meeting a deadline. It's on the front line with our heroes. And on the sidelines of the biggest games. It's a direct line to our loved ones. And it's a lifeline for the most vulnerable. There's a lot on the line.
Each day, the Children's Advocacy Alliance partners with leaders, legislators, and families across Nevada to improve children's health, education, economic well-being, and safety. We recognize Nevada will be no better than the state of its children. Be a part of this change. Be a supporter of the Children's Advocacy Alliance. For more information, go to caanv.org.
When in Carson City, Nevada Newsmakers records in the conference room of the Nevada Builders Alliance. Coverage of the 2025 legislative session is brought to you by Pro Group Management, Workers' Comp that works for you. NV Energy, proudly serving Nevada, providing electricity to 2.4 million electric customers. The Retail Association of Nevada, looking out for business. And by Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
Thanks for watching Nevada Newsmakers, coming to you from Carson City, from the headquarters of the Nevada Builders Alliance. We'll see you on the next broadcast. Thanks for watching.